Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our July meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission. I am Gary Lader, Chair of the HCC, and I would like to introduce the commission. We have Jeffrey Long, our Historic Officer and Registered Architect, Chaz Patrick, Business Owner, who could not be here with us, Seth Cornish, I don't believe, is here with us tonight, Ken Lash to my right, resident of the Mount Airy District, Craig Evans to my left, resident, Roger Hudak to my left, resident, Mike Simonson, our Chief Building Inspector, and we might have one commission member, Desiree Strasser, who is with us virtually tonight. Is she able to check in on the microphone? If not, I think that's okay because we have a quorum. I will read some of our ordinance information. It is the purpose and intent of the City of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings in areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order. After identifying the project address and the presenters, our historic officer will provide a background on the buildings and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow public comment, and ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial, and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The Historic Conservation Commission is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. Oh, you know what? I think somebody out there must have their microphone on. So that would be in the listening audience, right? Okay. I'm just going to ask anybody who's out there listening remotely to turn off their microphone, please. If any commission members have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this time. And I don't see anyone. As people come to present at the desk up front, please sign in. One last note, there is a 45-minute time limit on new proposals for large projects. Upon a second visit to the commission for large-scale projects, the following will be required: an architectural plan with lot lines, setbacks, defined architectural features, all measurements, including the amount of floors, foundation, walls, parapet, window sizes, and the like. A complete set of elevations of the building with streetscape drawings showing the new structure in context with surrounding buildings is required. And with that, I'd like to bring up our first applicant for 25 West 3rd Street, being Arts Quest. And if the applicants can come forward and make yourself comfortable at the desk, and please sign in. Jeffrey, because there's so much to talk about on this project, I was wondering if your first part of the presentation can be limited to a description of and analysis of the buildings proposed to be demolished before we go into the actual proposed design.
The applicant is proposing all buildings to be demolished, so it doesn't change my approach, but whatever you prefer, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. 25 West 3rd Street. Building descriptions, period styles, and defining features. There are 6 interconnected buildings along Northampton Street, located between West 2nd Street and West 3rd Street. They comprise the existing Banana Factory Arts and Education Center. For ease of reference, the names of the 6 buildings within the certificate of appropriateness application are retained from my building descriptions and my assessment. The applicant has labeled them Building A, B, C, D, etc. Building A, the house, is the oldest existing building within the complex. It is located at the southwest corner of the current project site. This structure was constructed circa 1885 and retains select original defining features. They include the fact that it was originally detached. It's a 2.5-story, 3-bay brick masonry single-family dwelling with rear framed appendages. The brick facade has been stuccoed over, and the original windows have been replaced with inappropriately divided double-hung windows. However, the decorative entrance door, the door surround, and the covered stoop remain intact, as does the bay window along the east facade. The building was converted to commercial use in the 1990s with an art gallery at the entry level, while the upper level serves as a mechanical and storage space. Building B is called infill by the applicant. It is the newest building component of the overall complex and dates from circa year 2000. This single-story masonry structure with a flat roof wraps around the oldest building on the north and east facades and serves as a connector to the other structures at the site. Windows along the west facade provide natural light to spaces facing the parking lot, while a covered entrance along the east facade accommodates a service entrance. Building C, called Theodoritas, is a 3-story, 5-bay masonry building with a low hip roof and a step parapet that fronts Northampton Street. Constructed in circa 1936, when the Demetrius Theodorus Wholesale Bananas Company was first located at this property, it was once a freestanding structure, but now connects to the oldest building via the contemporary infill to the south and is adjacent to a mid-1950s addition to the north. The building has undergone some alterations, primarily when it was renovated by ArtsQuest for its current use as an arts and education center, but retains much of its original integrity. Although the windows and doors have been replaced and the central raised parapet was reconstructed using non-matching brick, the delineated facade with vertical pilasters, cast decorative elements, as well as the stepped and corbelled parapet all remain. Most distinctive is the structural terracotta wall along the south facade and presumably a twin wall on the north facade that was later covered by the adjacent structure. Also referred to as hollow structural tiles, this type of construction is often associated with utilitarian structures dating from between 1900 until 1940. Few similar structural terracotta buildings exist in South Bethlehem, or they used to, and few remain. So this building serves as a unique representation of the specific construction technique. The upper portion of the western or rear facade that faces the parking lot has a painted mural in a simple black lettering on a white background, identifying this as the Fowler Arts and Education Center. Building D, called the Banana Expansion, is a 3-story, 4-bay masonry building with a flat roof and flat parapet that serves as an addition to the north of the original banana warehouse structure. The Demetrius Theodorus Wholesale Bananas Company purchased the lot for this building in 1953, and the resulting structure facing Northampton Street appeared soon thereafter. Historical images confirm the 3-story brick structure originally included glass block windows and simple details typical of 1950s utilitarian architecture. The exterior has since lost its historical integrity with a white stuccoed exterior finish and aluminum storefront windows. Located in the upper parapet portion of the western and eastern facades, facing both Northampton Street and the parking lot, are illuminated 3-dimensional yellow all-capital letters and a stylized font that identify this whole complex of structures as the Banana Factory. The circa 1860 Lehigh Valley Hotel was demolished in 1960 to make way for further expansion of the Demetrius Theodorus Wholesale Bananas Company with the construction of Building E, the garage. The resulting 1-story brick masonry structure with a flat roof and a flat parapet was conceived as a utilitarian garage that serviced deliveries to the produce company. Original garage doors have been replaced over time, along with new window and door configurations. The west facade is decorated with a series of large-scale tile mosaics that continue onto the nearby portion of the west facade of the adjacent Banana Expansion building. According to the Banana Factory's website, these mosaics resulted from the Banana Works projects, which were public arts collaborations that involved professional artists and local young adults during the period 1998 to the year 2011. Building F, the auto parts store, is a one-story brick masonry building with a flat roof and a stepped parapet that fronts West 3rd Street. It was once a freestanding structure that served as a Plymouth automobile dealership, but now connects to the oldest structure via the contemporary infill. The structure dates from circa 1925. It's considered classical revival in style, with terracotta detailing at the cornice. It has a gabled entry with scroll brackets and lighting consoles, and it has a parapet coping. Surviving original architectural details also include an arched transom with a fan light over the central entrance door and a large storefront windows that flank either side of the entrance. So that was a summary of all the existing buildings, and per your request, each one of those is proposed by the applicant to be demolished. Proposed alterations: the applicant proposes to construct a new cultural center at the site of the current Banana Factory Arts Center. For my assessment, I use the following citations: Secretary of Interior Standards number 1, concerning the use of a property; number 2, concerning the historic character of a property being retained and preserved; number 3, concerning recognition of physical records of the historic property; number 4, concerning changes to a historic property over time; number 5, concerning distinctive materials, features, and finishes of historic properties; and number 9, concerning new additions, exterior alterations, and related new construction. I also reference number 10, concerning new additions and new construction, that they, if removed, should retain the essential form of any historic property. I also reference the ordinance that Mr. Lader read at the beginning of tonight's meeting. We also have historic guidelines for various issues. I reference specifically demolition, and I'd like to quote from that. HCC will not recommend approval for demolition unless the following: the proposed demolition involves a non-significant building, a non-significant addition to a building, or a non-significant portion of a building, provided that the demolition does not adversely affect those parts of the site or adjacent properties that are significant. The other category for potential demolition is if the applicant has demonstrated they have exhausted all other options and they will suffer undue economic hardship. I also reference the various guidelines concerning new construction, since the proposal is completely new construction. I'll get into those details during my assessment. And then finally, the guidelines for storefronts. Based on those various criteria, I created the following assessment and recommendations. Because the applicant has appeared before us many times, I'm doing my best to summarize each of those visits. So bear with me as I kind of create a summary of various activity we've seen over the approximate 4 years. The applicant appeared before HCC on September the 17th, 2018, as I said, almost 4 years ago, as a discussion-only agenda item seeking feedback, i.e. no motion, about an initial concept to redevelop the existing site. The applicant's original design involved a 4-phase work plan, initiating with the demolition of Building A, the house, and the adjacent Building B, the contemporary infill, along with site clearing in preparation for construction of a large-scale 4-story detached structure that was approximately 70 feet high along the entire western edge of the project site, which is currently the parking lot and the side plaza. There would also be smaller scale infill to connect the new structure with the existing Building F, the auto parts store, which was to remain and become a lobby for the new facility, before demolition of Building C, the Banana Warehouse, demolition of Building D, the Banana Expansion, and demolition of Building E, the Banana Garage, all to make way for a plaza and parking. HCC commentary from that initial meeting can be summarized as follows. HCC did not recommend demolition of Building A, the house, but rather they wanted to see that incorporated into the overall design. HCC did not want to see demolition of Building C, the Banana Warehouse, but also integrated into the overall design proposal. Specifically, the exposed structural terracotta exterior walls were to be rehabilitated and continue to retain Building F, the auto parts store, as part of the overall design proposal. The reasons for requesting retaining those three structures is because they all date from the period of interpretation of the Historic Conservation District. As a reminder, that's from approximately 1880 until 1950. And those three structures all date prior to the 1950 cutoff date. HCC continued they wanted the new construction to reflect the more industrial nature of the site. The applicant at that time proposed metal panel siding. HCC considered that inappropriate and encouraged facade materials that were influenced by the existing structures. The new construction per HCC should also be discernible from the historic buildings, but also respect the existing scale, rhythm, and connections with the existing buildings as well as the public sidewalk. The applicant returned 3 months later on December the 17th, 2018, with a revised design concept that responded to select concerns expressed originally by HCC, including they reduced the height of the new main structure to 3 floor levels at a height of 46 feet. The entry-level walls of precast concrete panels and the upper-level walls of brick face finish, they had changed the metal panel siding to a combination of concrete and brick. The large aluminum window systems previously did not align vertically. They subsequently were aligned vertically in structural bays. Some had painted metal panel inserts. There was a connector between the new construction and the existing structures as an aluminum curtain wall system that also served as a double height lobby that could be accessed from the front and the rear plazas. Building F, the auto parts store, was retained, and also Building C, the banana warehouse, was integrated into the overall concept. Following a lengthy discussion with the applicant and a subsequent public commentary, some voices supporting the proposal and also some criticizing the design proposal, HCC unanimously tabled any decision to approve the proposed demolition portions of the existing buildings and to construct the new community center until the applicant had revised certain elements of the design. I can summarize those comments as follows. HCC had reservations about the loss of Building A, the house. They considered it a contributing structure to the district. They requested elaboration on the proposed facade improvements to Building C, Theodoritas. They suggested that outdoor murals not be painted directly onto the building, but rather onto panels that would be mounted to the building. They requested the applicant consider spandrel glass instead of the metal panels in select windows. The mechanical penthouse on the new structure would be screened and set back significantly from the main facade, approximately 10 feet. They requested the applicant to consider cast sills for the windows in deference to details of Building C, Theodoritas, to help delineate the new window openings. They also requested more details on the one-story addition to the east of Building F, the auto parts store, and they requested resolution about the scale and details of the proposed outdoor plazas. The applicant returned to HCC 1 month later on January the 28th, 2019, with no substantive changes to the previous design approach, but with more detailed drawings and clarifications to HCC's previous concerns. Following a lengthy discussion and no public commentary, the HCC adopted a proposal, and the vote was 5 in favor, 3 against, that City Council issue a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed work as presented with certain modifications. Those modifications are described as follows. Demolish Building A, the house, demolish Building B, the infill, retain and renovate Building C, the Theodoritas, demolish Building D, the banana expansion, demolish Building E, the garage, retain and renovate Building F, the auto parts store. The new building along the western edge of the site would be 3 floors with a flat roof, a base of precast concrete panels at 15 feet high, 2 brick face facade upper level floors at 14 feet each, topped by a 3-foot high parapet. There was a 9-foot high rooftop equipment penthouse that was recessed approximately 10 feet back from the upper wall surface and obscured from below with a painted metal screen. There were large format aluminum window systems with vertical and horizontal divisions that referenced the industrial nature of the site that were painted black, that punctuated the 2 upper floor levels and aligned vertically. They also had cast window sills. The full-height windows at the entry level of the west facade aligned vertically with windows on the upper level. The precast concrete facade was to receive murals painted on weather-resistant panels. The new connector linking the main structure with the existing Building F, the auto parts store, as well as Building C, Theater Rita, served as a double-height lobby, accessed from both plazas, and included exterior cladding in aluminum curtain wall system with black painted divisions. The Building F auto parts store remains a multifunctional gallery. Note the applicant had agreed to return to HCC with more details concerning the rehabilitation of various architectural details during a subsequent review. Building F auto parts store also was to receive a one-story addition along its eastern facade that stepped back from West 3rd Street but matched its height. And finally, Building C, the Theateritas, was integrated into the redevelopment project. Main improvements included cleaning and repointing various masonry details. At the meeting, the applicant also agreed to cooperate with the Bethlehem Fine Arts Commission concerning the fate of the existing mosaics on the various facades. The applicant also agreed to return to HCC for subsequent review of such items as exterior signage and lighting, as well as details associated with the designs of the 2nd Street Plaza and the 3rd Street Plaza. So that's where we last saw the application, and that's a summary of the resulting certificate of appropriateness. Pardon me just a second. Rather than addressing the remaining issues identified within the current certificate of appropriateness, the applicant now returns to HCC with a completely reconceived design proposal that envisions the demolition of all the existing structures in order to construct a new, semi-detached, 5-story, steel frame structure with a flat roof, as well as a mix of brick and metal panel siding that stretches along the entire width of the site facing West 3rd Street, and connected to a new, semi-detached, 1-story, brick masonry ancillary structure with a flat roof facing Northampton Street. The main structure measures approximately 200 feet wide by 130 feet deep by 80 feet high, while the secondary structure measures approximately 90 feet wide by 40 feet deep by 19.5 feet high. I say approximately because there are slight variations and not every facade aligns on every street. Immediately to the rear or the north of both structures is a plaza with green space, entrance into the main structure, and service entrance for the secondary structure, while the northern half of the site is dedicated to parking. Justification for the new design approach that necessitates demolition of all the existing structures, including those previously agreed by the applicant to retain and integrate into the overall project scope, is budget-driven. The various supplemental information accompanying the current certificate of appropriateness application in support of the contention that the project expenses can be reduced by 8 to 10 million by demolishing all the existing buildings and by constructing, quote, a straightforward and efficient multi-story building. The Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation do not offer guidance on demolition because they assume all contributing historic structures will be rehabilitated rather than demolished. So the various standards that I referenced have to do with existing structures and not with necessarily with demolition. However, as previously mentioned, the Conservation District guidelines, as well as the ordinance that created the district, allow HCC to recommend approval for demolition if, quote, the applicant has demonstrated that they have exhausted all other options and they will suffer undue economic hardship, end quote. Based upon the supplemental information concerning the economics of the new design approach, compared with the previous design solution, the discussion of the proposal to demolish all existing structures, including the 3 buildings that date from the Historic Conservation District period of interpretation, is warranted. So in the past, outright HCC said these 3 buildings specifically date from the period of our district. That is our reasoning for not allowing demolition. The applicant had not put forth information to satisfy those conditions I mentioned before. The current application is their approach at addressing at least the one issue, which is undue economic hardship. I can stop my assessment at this point, or I can continue the next phase of my assessment.
Yeah, maybe we could take a break from the assessment and Todd and Cassie, welcome. Thank you for coming, and thank you for all the information you put together. I see there's an incredible amount of work here. So, maybe I'm trying to think what's the best way for you to, there's a big issue in the room, of course, is the demolition, and yet, of course, we want to hear all about the design too.
Sure.
So I'll leave it up to you how you want to address this.
So we have,
Sorry, one thing. Desiree, if you are in the ether, can you let us know? We have one commission member who should be with us virtually. And perhaps she wasn't able to join us. Okay. Right.
all
Let's
right.
go ahead.
Well, I'll start by saying thank you very much for taking the time to revisit this project. It's incredibly important to ArtsQuest. We acknowledge that this project has taken somewhat of an unusual course with respect to the HCC, and for that, we appreciate your patience. It goes without saying that ArtsQuest has a profound impact on the city of Bethlehem and the Lehigh Valley and beyond, with the mission-based programming offered at the current Banana Factory. Our vision is that a new cultural center at this site will ensure that this programming will continue into the future and enable ArtsQuest to offer exceptional cultural and art experiences and to expand outreach for arts and educational programming in South Bethlehem and beyond. Cassie Hilgert, the president of CEO of ArtsQuest, is here with me this evening, and she has prepared a statement to share with the HCC related to this application.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you, Historic Commission, for letting us be here tonight. This is an issue of equity. All of our programs at the Banana Factory can be accessed by anyone of any background and financial need, and that need is only growing. Our education programs have grown over 200% over the last 5 years, serving nearly 5,000 students from across the Lehigh Valley. Over 90% of education programs are offered at no cost to students or their families. We create collaborative programs for underserved individuals with dozens of our nonprofit partners in the community. We offer studio spaces to artists and other nonprofits at below market rates. In addition, ArtsQuest does not turn away anyone who can't afford our classes or camps. There has been a 63% increase in tuition revenue since 2012 and a 17% growth in visual arts tuition class revenue in the past year alone. We created a pro forma for the facility that you see in front of you this evening. The operating margin in the first full year of that building is less than 10%. Keeping the two contributory structures of the 6 buildings that make up the Banana Factory inflates the cost of the project to the point where it cannot sustain itself. In other words, undue economic hardship. A new structure reduces the cost of the project and creates the most beneficial use of programming space, which is the best community use. The current Banana Factory has nearly $1.5 million in deferred maintenance, as well as annual expenses that reduces our ability to provide free and reduced cost space to artists and the community. Building a new structure at the current location is the most efficient way for us to continue serving Bethlehem's growing and changing community. We have determined that this is the preferred location for a new cultural center. It's close to the Bethlehem Area School District, where we serve at-risk students. It's also served by public transportation, which is critical in serving socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. Not only is the site the western gateway to the Southside Arts District, but we currently own the land. A number of buildings around us are either constructed or planned, are much taller than what we are proposing. We have taken into account the materials of other buildings, window size and placement, and other factors, and we believe this creates a design that nods to our history, while just as importantly, looks to our future. It would be a shame to be singled out when other buildings of more modern design and higher elevation have been approved all around us. Again, this is an issue of equity. This year, the Banana Factory hosted Bart Cooper's Heroes exhibit. Bart Cooper is an internationally known artist who not only designed this year's...
Excuse me a second, Cassie. Someone out there needs to turn off their microphone, please. Thank you.
This year, the Banana Factory hosted Bart Cooper's Heroes exhibit. Bart Cooper is an internationally known artist who not only designed our Music Fest poster, but also spoke with hundreds of school children, with thousands of others visiting outside of his time here. Those school children, especially those school children from communities of color, got to not only see themselves in his images, but in the artist himself. They were represented. This is what I would argue was their lasting impression, not the terracotta tiles on the outside of the building. Let us do with cultural and visual arts what we have been able to do with the performing arts through Music Fest, the Music Fest Cafe, and other stages. This new building is a reflection of the Southside Arts District, which we are located in, and it keeps costs down. To put it bluntly, we want to raise money for a building where everyone across our diverse community can benefit from all ethnic and racial communities, veterans, entrepreneurs, artists, retirees, and school children. This design reflects who we were, but more importantly, who we aspire to be as a community. In order to continue our 39-year history of building community through the arts, it is imperative that we build a new cultural center at a cost that can sustain itself in the long term. A new center will meet the growing needs of Bethlehem and will also further stabilize the Southside Arts District, all of which help to preserve and enhance the environmental quality of the area, foster economic development and tourism, improve property values, and further enhance civic pride. I thank you for your consideration.
You're very welcome.
All right. As demonstrated in our application, this project has been studied by 3 separate reputable architectural firms with more than 7 diverse design solutions completed over a period of 7 years. Each of the design solutions was developed thoroughly and as necessary for one of Lehigh Valley's best construction management firms to provide a comprehensive and responsible project cost estimate, which we furnished for your review as part of our application. All this information has been provided to you. Through this process, it has become clear that ArtsQuest has exhausted all options to preserve the existing buildings and will suffer undue economic hardship if the HCC does not approve a COA for demolition. It's our opinion, I know it's just our opinion, that the Banana Factory block and surrounding city blocks along 3rd Street have little contributory fabric remaining. The newly constructed and proposed structures along the southern side of 3rd Street across from the site have dramatically altered the scale of the streetscape around the Banana Factory site. A non-contributory hotel exists across from the site. An industrial storage lot exists to the west of the site. And we acknowledge that there is a 2-story residentially scaled structure, Lehigh Pizza, to the west of the site with a large parking lot directly along 3rd Street. 4 of the 6 existing buildings were previously approved for demolition. We now seek a COA for demolition of the remaining 2 structures, Building C, the Theodoritas Banana Warehouse, and Building F, the former auto parts dealership. Approval of adjacent projects across 3rd Street has now created a dramatic shift in scale for the single-story structure at the corner, the former automotive dealership, which is counter to HCC design guidelines relative to size and scale. Consideration to the value of a new cultural center's importance to the south side should be weighed against the value of preserving the banana distribution warehouse building. Retaining the 2 existing buildings complicates the form of the new structure to the point at which significant cost is added to the project, creating undue economic hardship. As our application has demonstrated, ArtsQuest has thoroughly evaluated all other options and will suffer undue economic hardship if forced to retain the existing buildings. As demonstrated with the presented financial analyses, the HCC's recommendation to keep the existing buildings is beyond ArtsQuest's financial means for this project. That's all I have to say about the demolition. Jeff, if you want to.
Well, I'd like to open the discussion up to
Sure.
commission members. If anybody has some questions, comments.
Are we going to get any more information from the historic officer on recommendations or?
Jeffrey, the next part of your presentation was going to be specific to the design itself?
The next portion has to do with size, scale, proportion, et cetera, of the proposed new construction.
Mhm.
And I cited from the relevant guidelines the 3 options
Okay.
concerning possible demolition, and they're quoting one of those 3, economic hardship.
Mhm.
I don't have a vote. The HCC decides demolition or not. I can just
Yeah.
summarize projects.
Craig, if you feel it would be helpful to have Jeffrey do his analysis.
Typically, what we have done, and I think it's appropriate here,
Mhm.
is that we hear the historic officer's complete presentation so that our discussion is relevant to the input of the historic officer.
Okay, I'm also trying to be mindful of our 45-minute time limit. So I think what that just might mean is that this meeting will have to just stay focused on understanding the project, and hearing public comment.
Okay. So where are we?
Uh,
I didn't hear what the question was. Where are we? So we are, so I'm concluding right now. So 4 buildings have been, received a COA, have received a COA for demolition. So they're kind of off the table for the discussion. So really the focus is on 2
Well-
buildings,
Not necessarily, because this is a new project
but we already have a COA issued.
for a different project, really.
Okay.
Gary, if the Historic Commission feels that the demolition is directly related to the proposed new structure, then I recommend we hear Jeff's comments on the proposed new structure.
I concur, Gary.
What the commission
No.
wants.
Yeah,
No, that's
I'm just
fine.
saying.
If we're going to treat that,
Keep it
in that
moving.
manner, let's
we're
keep-
37 minutes into a 45-minute time limit, so.
I'll do whatever the floor wants.
Okay. I would like to hear more from commission members on this. To me, the important thing really is, to talk about the demolition here, but, I think we need some more input.
Well, it's tough for me to say that. I understand what you're saying. It's tough for me if we're considering this a new project
Mhm.
and we're not going to consider the existing COA that didn't expire for the 4 demolitions, then we'd have to hear about the whole entire new project. And I think that I don't think this overrules the existing COA. I don't know if anybody disagrees or agrees with me on that. I think the existing COA stands. Council, you know what I mean? Council voted it. We've gone through this before. So it really comes down to 2 buildings that are being asked to be demolished rather than 6.
All right. Well, I think what I'm hearing from you, Mike, is Jeffrey should continue with his analysis.
My pleasure. Should the HCC approve the request to demolish all the existing structures, the applicant is then tasked with replacing the lost buildings with new construction that does satisfy the Secretary of Interior standards, as well as the relevant design guidelines. The new structure should be clearly differentiated, but compatible in size, scale, and shape, as well as massing and proportion of the existing contributing structures while reflecting the prevailing streetscapes. The current design proposal would fill the voids left by the demolished structures, which is appropriate. It also seems to reflect the prevailing setbacks along both streets, although a depiction of the adjacent context would help me to discern that. Right now, the drawings end at this site, and it would be nice to see at least a little bit of what goes on around, just so we can make sure everything aligns properly. If so, that's also appropriate. However, the guidelines continue by noting, quote, new construction should reflect the dominant cornice and roof heights of the adjacent buildings and proportions of the building elements to one another and of the streetscape, end quote. And it continues, in South Bethlehem, quote, where 2- and 3-story buildings are the norm, buildings that digress from these standards by any great degree seriously impact the historic conservation district. If large-scale construction is considered, particular attention will be given to the effect of the proposed building on the nearby contributing structures. Again, the key word I think here is contributing structures. They reference several structures that are not contributing. The guidelines talk about contributing structures. Particular attention will be given to the effect of the proposed building on the streetscape and on the district as a whole, end quote. The current design proposal digresses from the dominant cornice heights of nearby contributing structures, which are typically 2, 2.5, and 3 stories tall, by rising 5 stories and more than 80 feet at the highest dimension. It must be noted that the nearby 6-story mixed-use structure at the corner of West 3rd Street and South New Street was completed in 2018 and is not considered as contributing to the historic district. The uppermost floor level recesses 6 feet from the main facade along West 3rd Street, which does start to mitigate the overall building height. However, in the past, HCC has requested a minimum of a 12-foot setback necessary to avoid perception of any uppermost floor level from the street below. Similar to HCC initial feedback at the very first meeting, and based upon relevant design guidelines, the current proposal for a 5-story structure at 80 feet high is inappropriate for the immediate streetscape and more general for the overall historic conservation district. An appropriate design solution would be limited to 3 stories, conceivably with an additional 4th floor level if significantly set back from the front facade to avoid perception from the street below. And those comments were also made for the other projects that the applicant referenced that were overridden sometimes by City Council over the advice of the Commission. That rather than referencing the nearby mixed-use structures with commercial entry levels and the 2 floor levels of residential units above that are depicted in the application on pages 4 through 8 of the supplemental computer-generated illustrations, the applicant should be more influenced by the existing larger-scale industrial buildings of the currently proposed for demolition. So their proposal references the mixed use, the typical storefronts, and then residential. Those are typically 2 stories above. Theirs goes above that. They reference that, and that's okay to reference. A lot of our buildings in the district do. I find it a little unusual they don't reference their own buildings that are on the site that are much more of the scale that they're proposing, that have a more industrial nature. I would have expected to see that based on those initial discussions that HCC had about 4 years ago, where they were kind of trying to pull that out of the applicant. In fact, some of those same buildings are the inspiration for the Banana Factory name that the facility currently has. The relevant design guidelines also note that facades of new construction should have, quote, similar proportions of solids, meaning walls and siding, to voids, which would be storefronts, windows, and door openings of the neighboring buildings. The punched openings of the current design proposal along West 4th Street are contemporary in style, but appropriately reflect the similar proportions of solid to voids of the neighboring structures and also appropriately align vertically, at least on the front facade. Similar to previous commentary, the applicant is encouraged to consider windows similar to the existing larger scale industrial buildings currently proposed for demolition. The proposed storefronts require further development, in my opinion, and I'll discuss them a bit more in detail if we move forward in the discussion. The proposed aluminum curtain wall system at the southeast corner of the main or south facade that wraps around the entire side or east facade definitely warrants discussion. HCC has previously determined limited use of curtain wall systems as connectors between existing structures as appropriate. However, large expanses of curtain wall within building facades have in the past been considered inappropriate by the HCC due to its incompatibility with historic materials, features, and finishes of contributing structures within the district. Similarly, the proposed rooftop terrace at the east end of the new building with expressed steel structure and the arched canopy recalls a similar terrace at Arts Quest Center located further east in South Bethlehem. However, that structure is outside the boundaries of the district and was not required to adhere to the relevant design guidelines, while the current design is inappropriate due to its visible perception from the street below. Design guidelines continue by referencing such important issues as materials, textures, and architectural details. Though conceived as one structure, of the overall building mass of the main building shifts in materiality from dark brown brick to dark metal panels as the front facade stands proud slightly at the upper floor levels along the East 3rd Street facade. According to relevant design guidelines, brick is appropriate as a facade material. However, the metal panel system was already determined by HCC as inappropriate during its initial discussion with the applicant. The applicant was requested at that time to consider facade systems that, quote, reflect the industrial nature of the project site, and new material should be influenced by the existing structures, end quote. Relevant design guidelines note that, quote, traditional materials common in the district, such as brick, wood, stone, and terracotta, are recommended, end quote. As previously stated, the proposed rhythm and patterns of the punch windows are contemporary in style. The same guidelines note that windows should be functionally similar, and oftentimes we see in the district that means double hung for residential. However, this is not residential. In this case, we would expect perhaps hopper or casement metal windows that reflect the existing industrial structures that are on the site and also very close nearby. And they would have very similar mutton or grid patterns, as well as express sills or lintels within the neighborhood's historic buildings. So the punch windows, we typically don't see those, and I don't know if HEC has ever approved just blunt punch windows based on the guidelines would be inappropriate. The relevant design guidelines also depict design components of appropriate storefronts. That would include an apron at the sidewalk level, a glazed entrance door that would be flanked by display windows. There would be transoms above. I do think they have full plate glass and transoms. What's missing is that lower apron. There typically would be a sign band above the transom and then some kind of cornice that separates the storefront level from the upper levels. That would help to delineate the commercial entry from the upper floors. If the proposed 5-story and 1-story structures are deemed appropriate by HEC following discussion with the applicant, subsequent review should address in more detail such items as the proposed window and door types, window sills and lintels, any kind of cornice profiles, handrails, various facade materials, along with the visible exterior illumination. The applicant should be aware that tinted, colored, and reflective glazing is inappropriate. The applicant should also reference relevant design guidelines for storefronts before finalizing the components and details of those, as well as any sign bands. And similarly, the applicant should reference the guidelines for signage that offer suggestions for appropriate building signage concepts.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I guess I have a few comments. Maybe overall, I am wondering, I think I know what your answer is, but it's kind of a shame that the whole back part is all parking, and wouldn't you want to use that to build your new building over? And yeah, I mean, it might do a lot of great things for you to, use. I mean, this day and age in South Bethlehem, it seems like it's valuable real estate just to leave that all, open parking and not take advantage of building over it. And, it might help you.
One of the reasons we want to put the parking in the back of the building is if anyone routinely goes to the banana factory, will know that that is treated as a road. It is a safety issue with PYT and with artists that are coming in and out of that building. We've had to put in speed bumps, and there's still, when you go in the morning or if you leave at rush hour, there's a line of cars coming out there. So for us, putting the parking lot in the back is a safety measure.
Well, understood, but why not build your building over that big parking area?
So we feel it's important, Gary, to put it along 3rd Street to hold the street edge, of course. We've had further pushback and good feedback from the resident artists that parking is very important on our site. We acknowledge that there's parking garages very close by, but our clients and tenants really value parking on our site. So
Sure.
we've consolidated the footprint to allow for a good bit of parking on site to remain. I think it's worth noting that, given the programming in the building as well, there are a fair amount of people that drop off and pick up. So the parking is a valuable asset to this project in South
argument
Bethlehem.
on that. So, and then here's the other thing that I guess, Jeffrey alluded to this, and it strikes me a little bit funny too. You did all these great analysis in your booklet here, showing how you picked up the rhythm of nearby buildings. And yet, I would have liked to have seen some kind of reference or record of the buildings you're demolishing as part of the design. And, I guess I feel kind of sad in the way that this project seems to be really kind of, erasing a part of your history.
I would say erasing part of our history. I would rather rephrase it as building our future. Again, we are looking at a building where if we have to maintain those 6 buildings, the money we spend on circulation and bathrooms is money we are not spending on serving the diverse needs of our community. We have a waiting list for artists. We are busting at the seams for our education programs, and we need to build something that I think will serve people as much as history. And I think the design does both, saying here's who we were and where we are coming from, but more importantly, how much Bethlehem, and especially South Bethlehem, is changing. I would argue that 50 years ago, Bethlehem looked very different than it does today, and it deserves an art center that can attract regional, national visual artists and cultural events, as we've been able to do with steel stacks. That building is designed to look out onto the blast furnaces, to remember who we were and the importance of that, while also saying, here is what we are using to revitalize who we are today.
And I don't think there's an argument from anyone in this room about, all the great things Arts Quest does, how important it is. Your programming, it's all wonderful. We're all proud of it. What I've been hearing from my years involved with this commission from the people in this community is they value our buildings as a record of the history of South Bethlehem. So, by demolishing all of these buildings, it's not only taking away a part of our community's history, it's actually shrinking the district. I'm just kind of troubled by it. I think it's part of your identity too. I feel we are all being stewards here, and I think Arts Quest shares that stewardship.
That's why we started Music Fest, was to highlight the colonial industrial quarter and our Moravian history. And I think there is a lot of work being done there from becoming a World Heritage Site. I would argue on the South Side, we've got a lot more flexibility, and we have, not we as an Arts Quest, the city has called that the South Side Arts District. It is an arts district, and it deserves to look like an arts district. And this is the western gateway to that. It backs up to a tank farm, which is not the greatest gateway entrance. We would hate to see that expand. But if we can create an arts building that I think recognizes and acknowledges the arts district we're in, but also reflects that industrial, you talk about the metal paneling, reflects the industrial nature of the South Side, I think we've accomplished that very well. So I think we do acknowledge our history where there is a lot of history, but I think we also have to acknowledge that change needs to happen. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a matter of equity. The building that we want to put here in the Cultural Center is at the heart of our mission. It does not, like it has over in Steel Stacks, have 2 cinemas, a cafe with concert tickets and everything else that we can do to support that building. There are classes and camps that go on here for kids that are tuition-based, or they are free scholarships. No one is turned away. That comes at a cost. We have a financial responsibility to go raise money, to use it for the best effort. And we think raising that money to build a building where the programming space inside meets our changing community is the best use of those funds and the most responsible use of those funds. We have county funds invested in this project, state funds invested in this project. We're requesting federal funds. We would like to continue and finish the fundraising for this so we can meet the needs of tomorrow's Bethlehem.
I think, Gary, what you were alluding to is the exterior look of the building relating to, say, the Theater Edis building, for example, more strongly, remembering it somehow.
Well,
I just want to address the way that we arrived at the design that we've put in front of you is that we worked with our construction manager who ran cost models. So we started with the cost in mind, and what you see as our preferred design is what came out the other end. So everything was considered relative to value with the exterior wall assembly, the cladding, percentage of glazing. So this is where we wound up and what we can afford to build.
I want to ask one more question too. The site next door with all the trucks and tanks that have been there forever, I understand it's not owned by Arts Quest, but that's probably to remain as is after all this is done, unless and that part strikes me crazy too, of course, and I know it's entirely out of our hands, but with the mayor here, I'm just thinking, something ought to be done.
No one in this room wants those trucks there.
It just
It's
seems
safe
to
to
me,
say.
so the city should do something about that property because you're putting in so much investment and making this a beautiful site. And, I think it would help you somehow. And I just hate to see in the middle of our city more parking that's, it's just to me, it's a waste of resources. Anyway, that's my piece. And, I'd like to hear from other commission members.
There it is. I totally agree that those trucks could be, but I don't know if we have the capabilities to do anything about them. I really don't think we do. Mayor, I really don't think we do. Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice to put them down by the railroad, closer to the river, get them away from there. But I don't know if that's going to be possible. I have the history of that. I don't know. I'd like to go on record and saying I love this project, the way you did it. Perfect. Just the way it is. It'll look like it belonged there all along. That's what strikes me about it.
Thank you.
And it won't just be a renovation of the old building, because I know that can cost tons more money than replacing. So I'm fully in support of it. And I'd love to get rid of that tank farm, really. Because, and I don't think anybody has the capabilities to do anything about the damn thing. Excuse my language. But we shall see. But I want to congratulate you guys for putting together a magnificent proposal. And you can tell that I like it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
I just want to clarify one other thing that was brought up regarding the building that's proposed directly across the street. I believe this commission actually did not vote in favor of that project, but city council did. So and again, we really struggled with the scale of it, and I think it's going to be a big issue for us creating this canyon down that street. So But Craig, do you have any?
The delicate balance that we take here is one of ignoring all of the good things that are supposedly happening around your projects or others that people come to us, and preserving the character of the historic district. A lot of what comes before us now comes before us because the district was created, and we've been diligent for a couple of decades to try and make sure that there is an element of preservation. We don't hit a home run every time we come to the plate. We get a base on balls occasionally. Sometimes we strike out. But on balance, at the end of 9 innings or 10 innings or whatever, we're generally pretty much on target. Personally, I have a strong feeling that the existing certificate of appropriateness is where we should be. Because I think the period of the district is well represented by the 2 buildings that we compromised through discussion as being not only appropriate, but significant, or pick the order of words. And the fact that the project has languished since the certificate was, I presume, languished. I'm sure you were working on other things, but all of a sudden things have become a whole lot more expensive. So had the project been done 5 years ago or 4 years ago, this discussion would be moot. So I think we need some more discussion here amongst us, and we need to hear from from the public.
Yeah. So recently we had a project come in front of us. I forget which project it was, but it was a change. They lowered it. It was a 9-story building, I believe, and they lowered it 6 stories. And they previously had the approval for the demolition of the buildings. It was up on the corner. I forget who the owner was, but
Fourth?
a fourth.
Okay.
And we accepted that COA as the approved demolition, even though it was, I think, 8 or 9 years old. And the building changed, the project changed a little bit. So I'm having a tough time coming off the demolition for the 4 structures. But as far as, I have a couple questions for Todd and Cassie here. So I'm assuming it's financially how you're set up now is you're a nonprofit organization, right? Correct?
That is correct.
And just to make sure, so like the spaces that you use in this current structure, I'm using, when I say structure, I mean all 6. Okay. So the spaces you currently use in the current structure, are you outgrowing the spaces, or are you at a point where like expansion is necessary, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Expansion is necessary. We are out of space. And again, we have almost $1.5 million in deferred maintenance. And that is not for making new program space. That is bathrooms and elevators and HVAC units and nothing that really serves the community. So, you know, those buildings, when they were cobbled together as 6, back when it was first opened, I don't think that was the original intent for this to last
Right.
forever and ever. Amen. And we are at the point of throwing good money after bad.
So you're 100% occupied.
And we have a waiting list for artists.
Okay.
We are expanding the number of artist studios. We're greatly expanding the number of classrooms in the available or in the new building as well.
Right. Yeah, I saw that there's when you're going through I know we didn't really talk much about the project itself yet, but and I don't even know if we will get to tonight, but I saw that there's a lot more artist studios located in the floor layouts. How high? I didn't see how high is it to the top of that canopy?
It's 80 feet.
80 feet even? Okay. And is that top floor, how far back is that set in?
It's approximately
10 feet?
6 feet.
6 feet?
Yeah, it is dimensioned on here.
Oh, okay. There we go. I'm just looking at the wrong drawings. Thank you. Do you have an estimate of roughly, and I'm not going to hold you to this number, but do you have an estimate of how much you would approximately save by demoing versus trying to reconstruct the buildings?
Yes, we do. And I believe that's in the financial hardship or unreasonable economic hardship that we
Okay.
submitted. It's roughly $7.2 million, according to the
Okay, I see it here. The 50
construction management estimates.
Okay.
It's on page 6 of 10.
And that includes the demolition of the 6 structures.
Correct. It's very costly to perform selective demolition
Oh, I know.
when you're taking the buildings down and keeping other ones standing.
Yeah.
So
Would there be, if demolition was granted, would there be any consideration of saving any of the historic pieces from any of the buildings to be used at a later date or at a later site?
I think we evaluated and discussed that relative to the house at the last HCC go round. I'm not aware, maybe Christine knows of any architectural salvage or Jeff, architectural salvage companies around. I do know there's some down towards Philadelphia, but I don't know if they come up to this market.
We're not allowed to name or recommend
Okay.
No.
So,
I guess my response to that is we can look into that.
It would be a
further.
consideration. Yes.
but sorry, I do want to interrupt because I did want to read specifically the relevant Secretary of Interior standards that address that. I mentioned that when it was mentioned before by the commission. Mike, I don't think you were on the commission
No. Okay.
at that time. It says each Secretary of Interior standard number 3, each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historic development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties, will not be undertaken.
Okay.
I've cautioned the commission against that in the past. I just wanted to repeat that caution.
Okay.
And I think that when we look into it, I'm not saying that we're going to take parts of the building down and put them on the new building. I'm just saying that there may be some architectural salvage.
Correct.
Be
And that's
repurposed somewhere
around the
else.
lines of
Right.
what I was looking
Right.
for more. Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Ken, any comments?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Craig in that I was pretty happy with the last COA. And, we made a concession on that one specifically for Building A, which is contributing. But that was okay to be demolished. I've been looking at these numbers and I haven't been able to put enough time into it, I guess, but I'm trying to understand this 7.2 million that you mentioned. Is that savings over today's pricing for the original COA? Is that? Okay. And again, I'm not, real intimate with your design, but it's just things like miscellaneous metal are quoted for the approved COA at 525,000, whereas for the new building they're 113. I mean, these are, there's items in here that don't seem to be related to the demolition of all the buildings or just 4 of the buildings.
So the miscellaneous steel is part of the new construction in both of those estimates. I don't believe there wouldn't be any miscellaneous steel work that goes into retaining the existing buildings, save for maybe creating some new openings in load-bearing walls or similar.
All right, so why would it be that much higher for the selective demo than for the?
It has to do with the configuration of the building and the way we're connecting back to existing fabric or existing buildings, I believe.
Okay.
I think I'll address, if you don't mind, your previous question. If you look at page 5, we provide a cost or an accounting of the difference in cost for the previously approved HCC design. This is all relative to escalation since when it was priced. So if we were to build that design today, it would cost us $4.3 million more than when it was approved in 2019. And that's what has sent us back to the drawing board.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. There's a lot of documents here.
Gotcha.
I think one thing that's kind of difficult for us is usually when we have someone come in with a project and they say, hey, we want to demolish this, no one's been in the building for years. It's really falling apart. And then even then we kind of struggle with it. I think this is maybe the first time I've seen a project come in where you have a number of buildings that, they're safe buildings. They've been well maintained. I mean, I know not perfectly maintained. You mentioned deferred maintenance, but many of these buildings seem like they're very usable and, great contributing buildings. So it's just a comment. I just don't think anyone's ever come in before and said, hey, you know, we got perfectly fine buildings. We can't really afford to maintain them anymore, and we got a much better building we want to build in this place. You know, and again, it's just a comment. But if it's all right with you, I think there's a lot of people who are interested in commenting on this project. You know, I'd like to open it up to the public if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, and to address your comment, Gary, if you refer back to the studies that were completed in 2016 by Spillman Farmer,
Mhm.
They did explore keeping the existing facility and renovating it.
Mhm.
There was a subsequent one done in 2017, I believe, that looked at keeping the facility and renovating it and taking some space in Riverport. That now is obviously off the table because that space has been earmarked for something else. But those options have been explored thoroughly, and we've presented the costs associated with them as well in this as exhibits.
And again, anybody who wishes to make a public comment, please be specific to the building project itself, and announce your name and address when you come up, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. Oh, is there a sign-in sheet at the podium?
Yes,
Okay, please sign in.
I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight. I really appreciate the comments that
Oh,
you
and just announce your name.
made. Yeah, Bill Woodruff. My name is Bill Woodruff. I have been a member of the Arts Quest community for the 16 years since we've been in town. 10 of those years on the Visual Arts Board. And if you don't know, it's kind of been alluded to. The Visual Arts Board, this is their mothership. This project is kind of home. This is our wheelhouse, and this is really, really important to us and specifically to me. I'm a physician at St. Luke's and a property owner in good standing in the community in Bethlehem. Run a small business. And I think the first thing I want to say, and it doesn't pertain to the building, but I think there's an underlining theme here. And that is congratulations to all of you. You have survived the first 31 months, just the first 31 months of COVID. COVID has changed our lives dramatically, and you know that. I mean, individually, maybe your set points at how you do things, what's important, how you determine how you prioritize things, how you live your life. And to that end, we've had an opportunity to critically relook at the plans that you are presented tonight. I mean, these plans that Mr. Chambers and Ms. Hilgert are presenting are bold. They're forward-thinking, and I agree. To me, it's a great nod to what currently exists there. The industrialized approach to the building. I think it's actually fantastic. They've done an excellent job with it. And we've talked a lot about a couple of things. We've talked a lot about the financial repercussions of keeping those two buildings. I think there's more than that. I think that we have a family of about 35 people, which are our resident artists. These are the backbone, really, of our organization, and they will be completely displaced for the duration of time it takes to destroy the building, demolish the building, and then to rebuild it. So that's a factor. Some of these people, that's their only job. I mean, that's the only way they make money. They have studios, they teach classes, and it's going to affect them incredibly directly. When we receive funds, when we receive grants, I think there's an unspoken expectation that we use that money wisely. And I think selectively demolishing a building, gutting a building, refitting a building is not the way to do that. I think that puts in time cost and financial costs that are not necessary. Again, I think this is a bold plan. It's something that is not for 2022, 25. I think this is almost a timeless building. It'll be a great anchor for the South Side. I applaud you guys for putting the effort into it. I probably would have quit a lot sooner, but congratulations. So, and one last thing, this doesn't relate to anything. I was born in Brazil, and I know about bananas, and I don't think they grow them here in Bethlehem. I mean, maybe they do. But anyway,
Thank you for your
You-
comments.
yeah, any questions? No, probably, right? Get off this stage. All right.
Wish we could have you longer, honestly.
My name's Lee Riley. I'm employed by St. Luke's. Also, I'm a physician that ran the cancer program for 2 decades. I'm also a resident artist. I'm also on the board. What we learned in COVID in the healthcare system is sort of out of my purview. I'm a cancer physician, but we have been working with, and this doesn't, I apologize, it doesn't pertain specifically to the building, but it does to, I think, the financial future. What we've learned in healthcare, particularly with COVID, we saw a massive amount of post-traumatic stress disorders in physicians in healthcare. There's been a massive amount of data accumulating about using visual arts as a healing opportunity. I personally have gone through that myself with a new diagnosis of cancer. I think it is anticipated that we will see a bigger need for all the massive amounts of programs that ArtsQuest has been doing out in the community, particularly in the younger ages, where there's been a lot of stress. I think having this building open up the classrooms in a very open way is going to be very helpful at trying to keep our community healthy in ways that we have not uncovered. In Canada and in Europe now, physicians are now starting to write prescriptions for healthcare for arts programs. I see that coming into this country, and it is the new buzz. It is not here tomorrow or the next year, but it will be the next 5. And I think having a communal space outside of the hospital, patients don't want to go to the hospital to do art. It's an anxiety-provoking event. We have cancer patients come to the Banana Factory now. We have a wonderful time with staff and patients communicating. We think this component of art, visual arts particularly, is a very healthy way for a healthy community. And that's being supported more and more every year by more data. And I think it just supports the backbone of what the visual arts program, which is the core community of the Banana Factory. And you need a certain mass of artists together. You can't do this by having one artist here and one artist there. And that's what I see happening if we sort of move forward, keeping things the same. People will disperse, and we need a collective synergy at that center.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Riley.
Hello, my name is Rosa Carides Hoff. I am the community school coordinator at Donegan Elementary. I work for Lehigh University. I moved here 20 years ago from Germany, and I have spent most of my time here in the south side of Bethlehem. The south side of Bethlehem is a special place to me because it has that flair, the art, the music, the diversity. But it is important that we also move along and work to provide this community and the community in Bethlehem an opportunity to expand and to have more activities for our students. 15 years working at Donegan Elementary, and I cannot remember a day or a year that we did not work together with Banana Factory. In occasions, they needed to come to our building, but we always prefer to send the students to Banana Factory for the experience. Again, I'm a mother, I'm a Lehigh employee, I'm a Donegan employee, and I am here also as an ArtQuest board member. And yeah, in each one of these roles, I have benefited here in Bethlehem. As a mom, I have brought my kids to do classes and to do painting at Banana Factory. As an employee of Donegan Elementary, I have sent several times. Almost every year, we we had the families come to the banana factory to have an opportunity to see the place. I think a cultural center is very important, and we need to really make the space for it. This is not only about it's about equity, and it's about sustainability. If we have the buildings but we can't maintain them, this is a disservice to the community.
Thank you, Rosa. Yes.
Stephen Antalik, 737 Ridge. 70 years ago, I left Bethlehem. I returned 20 years ago. In the interim, I have developed double vision. One eye sees Bethlehem 70 years ago. And the other eye sees Bethlehem today. I took a walk down Main Street, and I noticed it hasn't changed. It's still a Main Street I saw 70 years ago.
It probably looks better now, I bet.
I took a walk down 3rd Street, and I was shocked. I thought I was in another city. Gone. The Market House, the centerpiece of the whole Lehigh Valley. Now, a mini mall. The architecturally sound retail stores on East 3rd Street, gone. There's now a gas station. Why? Because of historic preservation. Because of historic preservation. It did not exist on the South Side and has suffered for that. The history of South Side is disappearing completely. What's left are remnants. I greatly applaud Ms. Hilger for what she's doing, because I have great respect for ArtsQuest and Banana Factory. And it's her job to do that. It's her responsibility to her board. And she's doing a good job at that. But she has no concern. It's not her purview to be concerned about historic preservation. That's not her job. It's your job. So, also, I'm trying to understand why finances would enter into a decision concerning historic preservation. It doesn't have a place there. I understand that problem for Ms. Hilger. I understand. I pain for her. But I also pain for preservation of our South Side, which is your responsibility. So, what is your mission? What are your priorities? What is your priority here? Preservation of the South Side? I think that's very clear. And all I'm asking you is to accept your responsibility to that.
Thank you, Mr. Antalix.
I didn't mean to come down the runway. Hi, I'm Kevin Jazz. I'll try to keep you entertained for the next 3 minutes. I am a Northside resident. I moved here from Montgomery County. I'm not a physician. and I haven't been here 70 years. In fact, I moved here in 2015 with my wife and one daughter at the time. And we presently have two, and moved to the area because I got a job in Allentown and wanted to look for a place to live in the Lehigh Valley. And I fell in love with Bethlehem from the years of coming up here because of Arts Quest and because of all the things that it does, that I think that, you know, in light of historic preservation, also, you know, paves the way for, you know, a nod to our past and a look to our future, you know, like Cassie has shared. And the only comment that I really wanted to share was, you know, in thinking about the scope of the project and what it does, my two daughters go and attend summer camp, you know, all year long, every year since we've been here in 2015 at the Banana Factory. And as I looked over the old notes from, you know, previous meetings, and, you know, and I very respectfully, there is no terracotta that I'm interested in preserving in the building. It's not an attractive feature of the building. It's not an attractive building on the south side. I mean, to the previous, you know, gentleman's point, the north side, you know, Main Street is a beautiful street that should be maintained. There are plenty of things about the south side that I believe should also be maintained. And I think Arts Quest does a wonderful job with that, you know, keeping the steel stacks and the blast furnaces and even their construction a nod to the Bethlehem Steel in doing so. But when I look at the Banana Factory, with all due respect, it's an eyesore. It's not a building that I think to myself, you know, I'd love to see this building retained. And the new building, I think, really kind of meets the vision of what the rest of the city looks like. And to be quite frank, historic preservation is great, but the financial and long-term stability of the city is also something that should be thought about. And as somebody that moved here, because I wanted to live in this community and because I liked the way that it, you know, the path that it was on and the vision that it had for the future, I think you will continue to attract young families that are interested in the arts and interested in the culture and want to be a part of a growing, thriving arts community by taking on, you know, projects like this and creating these new opportunities. Because like we talked about, there are a lot of more residents that would love to be in there. There's more programs that can be had. There's more that, you know, myself and my family and the other residents of Bethlehem could benefit from, you know, the building itself. So that was what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
I will sign it, I promise.
Good.
We have to put our address here.
Get a driver's license.
Oh, never mind.
Good evening. My name is Greg Feinberg. I'm the former chair of Arts Quest. I am co-chair of the capital campaign that has to raise the money to pay for this facility. I'm former owner of the Design Center, which is across the street at 3rd and New. Also the former owner of the Johnson Machinery Building, which you now know as Riverport. And I was also the project manager for the Steel Stacks development, in which the Arts Quest headquarters, PBS 39, the Levitt Pavilion, the Visitor Center all exist. I have some familiarity with the South Side, and I've spent a fair amount of time, money, and development efforts on the South Side. I'm also an attorney, and one of my real estate partners and clients is named Stanley Theodoridis. Stanley Theodoridis is the grandson of the Theodoridis that you were referencing in the development of this project. I talked to Stan about the historic preservation of the Banana Factory, since he worked there for many years. It was his father's and grandfather's facility. His grandfather bought most of those buildings and developed them. And we talked about the historic value of that property. To quote Stan, there is no historic value to those buildings. Those buildings are just old. And I think something for you to consider is the distinction between what is historic and what is just old. That vaunted White House building was a bar and a brothel. The other buildings, his grandfather tore down a garage to build for storage and distribution of bananas. The design, the structure, and with all due respect to the historic officer, the cornices and the historic styles weren't built by his grandfather for design and historic purposes. At this point, they are just old buildings. They don't have historic significance. What we have tried to do in this design, what Todd has tried to incorporate into the structure of what he has presented to you, is to try to bring out the history of the entire South Side, of the steel development that was done here for so many years, and to reflect that in a new, exciting, functional building, which will be far more efficient than the existing buildings, which are just highly inefficient in terms of space. We would love to get rid of the tank farm, and we have tried many times. I have personally tried to buy the property. They'll be happy to sell it. It will cost a lot more than the purchase of than the construction of this building. And they want to be replaced in another location nearby with the same size and same capabilities. It's just not possible. We have dealt with that neighbor for many, many years and tried to address it. And we would love for the entrance to the South Side to not be a tank farm. But what we've tried to do with this design is to enhance the entrance to the South Side by giving it a vibrant facility that will be servicing the community in a much more efficient and productive way, while we, yes, demolish old buildings that are falling apart, that need maintenance, that can't be afforded and are highly inefficient. It's not historic preservation. It's just moving forward from what was old to what is new, better, and more productive, and better for this city and its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Vicki Dulé, and I'm the current chair of the Arts Quest Board of Trustees. I've had the privilege of chairing the board since 2020 through the pandemic. Felt it was important to talk about that for a second because there was a comment earlier about, why if this had been built 4 years ago, we wouldn't be dealing with the increased costs. But it's important to take a second and remember what we've all gone through together. And what I was able to witness firsthand is the dedication of the Arts Quest team to the mission. And part of that mission is expanding arts for all. And that was done with passion during the height of the pandemic, when we were all faced with not being able to access the arts like we had pre-pandemic. Arts Quest never shut their doors within the restraints that were out there. They worked within it and tirelessly innovated and found ways to deliver the arts to the community. And that's a part of the mission that they live every day. And unfortunately, because of all these forces working against us, the cost of the project is just not financially feasible. And that's why we're here today with the new request. Because of the fact that it's not feasible, the new request allows Arts Quest to continue to deliver arts for all in a more financially feasible way, in a cost-effective way, in a way that allows for long-term sustainability of the building in Arts Quest, and in a way that allows Arts Quest not to turn away applicants and students that can't afford classes. That's very important to their mission. The new cultural center also expands access to arts to our diverse communities in Bethlehem and the South Side. It's so important now more than ever to make sure that arts are accessible through our communities and our schools on the South Side and for the Lehigh Valley as a whole. It's really important, and this new plan allows Southside specific expanding the arts in a way that allows students, schools, the community at large to be able to have expanded access. For all the points that Cassie and Todd brought across today, we're at a critical juncture, and to deny the request, it really is to deny access to the arts, and it's to deny that access for our ever-growing South Side. It's needed now more than ever. And certainly on behalf of the entire board and all the boards, we humbly ask you to approve the request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, too. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mario Galante. I am the chairman of the Levitt Board. And I'm not here to talk about ArtsQuest because I've been involved for over 30 years with them, and we all know what an amazing organization it is. But I'm here as an educator. I was in education for over 40 years. At the end of my career in public education, which started in Allentown, I had the opportunity to work in many cities across New Jersey and in Pennsylvania on educational design. And the question they asked is, what do we do to help our kids? Well, how can we make our buildings efficient? How can we use our facilities to make our kids and our community stronger? Every single community came to the conclusion that we needed to improve the arts and the engagement of students in productive, enriching environments. That's what the Banana Factory does, has done, and the only way they can continue to do it is if it meets the financial responsibilities and grows. And growth means making history, not looking at history. Buildings were built to serve people. From the first lean-to that protected people to the historical buildings that served the Banana Factory back when they served them. So as an educator, I urge you to take the Banana Factory and move it forward for the community of Bethlehem, because that's what cities want and that's what kids need. Thank you.
Thank you too.
Good evening. My name is Lou Fromm. I'm on the ArtsQuest committees, the Performing Arts Board, the Cinema Committee, and also the Music Committee. And just a brief comment about the fact of respecting history. I think respecting history is not about respecting things. It's respecting how things maybe look or appear. And I can't think of another structure that pays respect to the history of Bethlehem, which I'm sort of new to, than this new ArtsQuest, Banana Factory building. I just feel strongly that we should think about the respect of history as opposed to just how things may look, or a piece of wall, or a piece or a cornice, or anything like that. Just I ask you to think about how this reflects the history of the area and the history of Bethlehem and what the future can provide for people that need it. Excuse me.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, excuse me. Need some water. But hello, everybody. I'm Orville Trout, and I am vice chair of the Board of Trustees. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the proposal by ArtsQuest. I'm
I'm
going
sorry,
to echo
I didn't catch your name.
Orville Trout.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And as again, thank you for listening to the proposal from ArtsQuest. I think it's important. And I think Mario said it well, which is, I understand what you're here to do and what your mission is, but certainly we have to be thinking about the community, right, as part of all of your work as well. And I would hope that as you think about your role and how you help to support the growth and development of children within this community, that you consider the plans that ArtsQuest has brought forward, which is really about forward looking and drive into the demand that's there. This area is certainly growing. I think the pandemic accelerated that in terms of people moving to this area from New York City and New Jersey, et cetera. But I think they've discovered that this is a community that is filled with a lot of richness in terms of the arts and what it offers to the development of children. And we have to face it, right? The children are the future. And, creativity through the arts and education is what's going to make the leaders of tomorrow. And so I would encourage you to support this project, still keeping with your mission, right? And your mission is to, and I understand, and this gentleman said it eloquently, right? Which is you have a mission, right? But your mission must evolve with the times, right? So in other words, as you look at the plans that are presented in front of you, they take into account all of the guidelines that the HCC is looking for, right? And I think they fit very well with the current designs that are in the area, and I would encourage you to approve that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Essler. I'm here for two other projects and didn't really expect to say anything today. And this is, as many of you know, I've been in Jeff's position here for somewhere like over 30 years for North Side and South Side. And the difficulty of this decision is something I feel in my gut. I can feel what you're feeling. And I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to say a few things. I've lived here for over, I don't know how many years now, 35 years. Know the architecture. There are many good comments made here. I currently am on the Pennsylvania Preservation Board, and we analyze National Register nomination projects from all over the state, which is a fascinating thing. I've learned so much about the history of Pennsylvania. But I do want to mention that might help as you think about this, that there are 4 different criterion that's used for the National Register nominations, and it's not just their architecture. So there's cultural significance, social history. There's many aspects that are part of things that are commemorated through National Register listing. Bethlehem is a really unique sort of two-sided place, right? But double vision, I loved it, Steve. One of the reasons we have such a great north side is because we have a rough and tumble south side. And a lot of change can occur here that saves the north side. So, you know, I think about it that way as well. That's not to say that, you know, you should just, you know, easily decide to tear down buildings. It's a really important mission and charge you have. The conservation district was put in place first and foremost to save buildings from demolition. But there's many aspects to history here. There's 2 sides to this city. And, you know, I just felt I needed to say a few comments about that. So when you look at the architecture, which I just briefly looked at, also keep in mind that this is a cultural center, and sort of historically, various institutional buildings were very different from their context. So, you know, there may be aspects that should relate to the context, but, you know, I don't know what the bank is now, Bank of America, right across the street from my office, you know, it's a big temple. It doesn't relate to its surroundings. So the new building maybe needs to be a little bit different, thought about a little bit different. It still needs to relate to the aspects of the guidelines that you have to follow. But anyway, just some comments. I'm here for 2 little projects on 3rd Street, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry you weren't first on the agenda.
I just want to ask if there's anyone out there who's listening in on this who wants to, you know, I think the public comment is extended to people virtual too. Am I right? No, it's not. Okay, so you got to be here to make public comment. All right. Yes, sir. Please come to the podium.
Bill Shire, 1890 Eaton Avenue. I wonder if Don Quixote ever faced a 3-minute time limit. 2 responses first. I hope that the data that has been provided to you demonstrates the undue economic hardship, which I've heard about repeatedly tonight, and so that it could be independently vetted if desired. And secondly, the fact that non-historic buildings are appearing in this neighborhood is not an argument to demolish the remaining history. Now, clearly, ArtsQuest would like to expand, and nothing wrong with that. They do good things. But there's a number of alternatives. In addition to a completely new building on that square block, the completely new building could be somewhere else. Or the existing configuration could be preserved and a smaller new building somewhere else could be built. And we heard tonight for yet another possibility, putting a building over the parking lot. And I'd like to add another possibility to the mix. I'm an economist and sort of an amateur city planner, I guess, over the years. As I look at the 6 buildings, the 2 that I'm partial to are the ones that are on 3rd Street, and in particular the house. It is painfully plain almost, but yet it evokes in me a memory of when times were simpler and more difficult. And the former auto parts store, which is it's got a certain charm to it, and that I think is about 100 years old. So here's my proposal to put in the mix: that those 2 buildings be preserved. The stuff behind it is possibly historic, but has no redeeming social value in my judgment. I mean, if it's ugly to look at, I mean, even if it's historic, I think you can get rid of it. And so the new building could be built in that remaining part of the block and give them another story. So then they would have 6 stories and just as much floor space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Okay, so I think at this point, I'm going to say if there isn't any more public comment, I'd like to see if we could move this forward. Perhaps, if someone feels ready to introduce a motion. There is one thing I would just like to clarify for everyone here, and being on this commission now for I think about a dozen years, and I've struggled a bit just to understand what is it we're doing here. Is it just to preserve individual buildings just because they're old? And I mentioned part of I think there's a feeling in the community that the buildings represent a part of our history, or whether it's workers' housing or whether it's a bank and so on. But I think what we also look at as a commission is that it's not the individual buildings, but it's the group of buildings itself that contributes to the character of our community. And we look at things like scale and height, we certainly look at different periods, and we're very much interested in how the buildings as a whole help to form the identity of our neighborhood. So I think when we pass a motion on this, that's what we need to consider. And I think, again, everyone here believes in the ArtsQuest mission. We all support it, and there's no question about that. And I like to say, fortunately, our job here is pretty easy. All we got to do is decide, hey, if it's a contributing building, what needs to be done with it. And certainly everything everyone said up here, resonates and is important to us. So I'm going to, Roger.
Yes, I'd like to move that we give a certificate of to move forward on this project. When I looked at it, I loved it from the get-go. It preserves and it will serve too, as the young lady who from mentioned about Dunnigan. it will serve our South Side kids. So with that, I make a motion that we approve this project.
Okay, is there any seconds here? Oh. Right, thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Jeffrey.
Okay.
So Roger, you're making a recommendation.
Yes,
Okay,
What's the recommendation? No, I still haven't clear.
I recommend that we grant a certificate of appropriateness for this project.
So is that the entire project or just to demolish the other two buildings or these six buildings?
right, and that's important too.
I just want to be clear
Yeah,
on it.
So your motion then should state that you are approving I think at this point, the only thing we should really be doing is, approving what's being proposed for demolition. And then, you might want to include in your motion, are you accepting the building design as is, or I think you just should clarify that.
I could take a shot at it. I could take a
I move that,
Want me to take a shot at it?
yeah, take a
Okay.
shot at it.
All right. With the previous COA of the demolition of the four former structures, and let me just pull my notes here together. Just want to make sure I have the right ones. The four previous structures, Banana Garage, Banana Expansion, Contemporary Infill, and the house were previously approved for demolition. I make a motion for demolition of Building F, the auto parts store, and Building C, the banana warehouse. As part of this project, I think preservation takes on many characteristics, and preserving the arts is one. And I think if a building is expanded out to its limits and needs additional space and better facilities, money could be well spent on a new building than it can be trying to save an existing building. So with that being said, this, as far as that would be part one of my motion. Part two would be in regards to the scaling and the massing, and then part three would be the details. And I think both the scaling, massing portion and the details they would have to come back at a later date, and we go over that a little bit more in depth. I think we spent so much time on the demolition tonight, we really didn't have a chance to dive into the building itself. And I think in all fairness, we do need to do that as well.
Request for clarification. Is it Mr. Hudak's motion and Mr. Simon's second? Are you?
I'll second that.
So you're seconding
Yeah.
his motion. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, very good. So I think we could put this to a vote then. Craig Evans.
I vote nay.
Okay, and would you should give a reason.
I think that, as I expressed before, I support the existing certificate of appropriateness.
Okay.
And think that there perhaps could be more that we would develop out of that.
Okay, Roger Hudak?
Yes, aye.
Okay, I vote nay, and the reason is I feel that there's other opportunities here for, I'm going to say this, I think there's a lot at stake, and I feel that there are some opportunities that haven't been explored, and even if you are demolishing the building, perhaps there's ways to preserve the facade or integrate it into the design. And I'm also really concerned that it sets a bad precedent for other applicants who may come in wishing to demolish a building simply because it doesn't fit their financial model. Mike Simonson.
I obviously vote yay.
Okay, and Ken Lausch.
Yeah, I'm going to vote nay as well. I think tonight a lot of people spoke and everybody had very good comments. I think we kind of talked past each other quite a bit. You're very convinced and very passionate about, your project. I think on the same end, we're very concerned, passionate about preserving history, historic buildings. So for those reasons, I decided to vote nay. I don't think this should end. I think that there, as Gary had said, there's probably other things that can be done to make this happen that would make it more financially palatable for you folks.
But how much
as well
money
as-
does an organization need to spend to invest in investigating those options? Because we've put 6 options in front of you.
Todd, I'm sorry.
I know it's inappropriate to comment right now, but I just felt like it was important to say.
I just need to summarize. So the motion fails 3 against 2.
Right.
Thank you.
And Jeffrey, okay, I thought you were asking to summarize the motion. You're just, yeah, so the vote is 3-2
Well,
against.
it's 2-3 theoretically. The support was
Okay.
2, so
All right.
2-3.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and, again, thank you for all your efforts. I think you've received feedback from us. I feel there's a way forward, and, we're certainly available to discuss this.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do now.
Yeah, thanks, Christine.
If we could take a breather, please.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So we're going to just take a 10-minute break.
I forgot to say something.
Yes, oh.
Idea of my idea. The old president do.
Yeah.
Design be
Oh, she wasn't able to log in. Okay,
Not familiar with.
okay,
Two storefronts.
okay.
She all right? Is she off then? We have a quorum anyway, so it's.
Oh, yes, you did. 125.
Did you want me to try to hook it back up or?
Oh, thank you.
You see his map in the Bethlehem Press?
There's a cartoon, a political
Oh,
cartoon.
I did not see it.
You gotta check it
Yeah,
out.
Red state, blue state.
They're all busted apart with all kinds of fireworks going on in the background.
Yeah, but it gives you the idea of the sections of. I've noticed that the red states and the blue states, though, are kind of state groups.
Yeah, I think we should continue. Chris is here and it'd be nice to finish up the meeting.
Well, you don't need my support for this.
Two more items. Yes, I know it does. Places, everyone.
Oh, good Lord.
We're hoping that,
Jeffrey, are you ready to reconvene? Okay, so we are on our next agenda item. I've lost my agenda sheet. Okay, here we go. We are up to 125 East 3rd Street. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Oh,
Is there anybody that wants to make public comments?
anyone left? No one likes us. Yes, they're out. I was in, they're gone.
So just for clarification, I don't have the impression that Desiree's going to try anymore.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Chris, thank you for staying with us through that.
Well,
first,
I was hoping I might get shifted to be first, but that didn't happen.
We figured you probably enjoyed seeing all that, and that's why we didn't shift you first.
Unfortunately, it's the order they come in, and we have no control over it.
That's fine. And as I said, I don't sympathize the decision that you had to make here. That's a difficult one.
Yeah. And I guess I should remind us all, this still is a public meeting and it's being viewed online.
125 East 3rd Street. This structure is an attached 3-story mixed-use masonry building with a flat roof that dates from circa 1910. Brick pilasters support a decorative upper cornice with ornamental end brackets. Structure is classical revival in style with primary facade materials of light brown brick and cast stone. The original storefront was altered during the late 20th century with beige face brick, while the area above that extends to the second floor windowsills received unfinished T111 vertical plywood siding. Aluminum frame double entrance doors centered within the storefront are flanked on one side by a display window and on the other side by a recessed paneled entrance door that leads to residential units above. The proposed alterations, the applicant proposes to renovate the lower facade. The guideline citations I used in my assessment include Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 that we heard from the previous application, as well as the ordinance that was read by Mr. Later at the beginning of tonight's meeting. My evaluation and recommendations. During the HCC meeting on November the 15th, 2021, the applicant received unanimous support of a motion that City Council issue a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing inappropriate windows at both upper floor levels with more appropriate casement windows to satisfy egress requirements. The new casement windows are aluminum clad with exterior applied muntins as simulated divided lights, along with heavy central mullions to fill the gaps between the pairs of replacements. The second floor level also is to receive a painted medium density overlay or MDO panels with trim infill above the casements that imply the original decorative transom. The applicant now returns to HCC with additional proposals to rehabilitate the entry-level front facade, along with a request to consider a proposed new handrail assembly at the rear facade. The current proposal to remove the inappropriate vertical plywood sheathing, as well as the inappropriate beige face brick at the entry-level facade, is appropriate. The proposal to enlarge the existing display window and integrated transom above is also appropriate. Similarly, the proposal to modify the existing double entrance doors as a single door with a side light, both with transoms, is also appropriate. The provided drawings indicate that the proposed glazed lower panel of the side, that the side light has a glazed panel at the bottom. I don't know if that was.
Actually, I just realized that.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what I intended
Okay, that
until
was
I
my
read that was like,
assumption.
and there
So-
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so if that, my suggestion would be to make that uniform with whatever else
That
happened.
would be a knee wall. Yeah.
Okay. I figured that was just a strange graphic issue. My suggestion would be that it all remain consistent. The applicant also proposes to modify the return wall between the front display window and the recess entrance as, quote, angled if possible, and to have a display window and transom above that corresponds with the front window. The proposals are appropriate. However, the applicant should clarify what is intended by if possible. I'm assuming maybe you've done some initial exploration, and we can get to that in a moment. So it's okay. The proposed return wall on the east side of the recess is to be sheathed in painted wood or composite beadboard. Both options are appropriate. The proposed dark bronze anodized aluminum framing elements for the replacement storefront assembly is also appropriate. The recessed access to the residential units above will remain and be made full height if possible. However, the existing door is to be replaced with an appropriate full light smooth fiberglass door in dark brown factory applied finish. Again, all of that is appropriate. Similar to my previous comment, the proposal for the side returns sheathed in this recess are to be painted wood or composite beaded board, which all are appropriate. The applicant should be aware that all appropriate glazing is not tinted, colored, or reflective. The application continues that full or partial removal of the plywood and brick sheathing depends upon revealed conditions and upon budget constraints. Selective removal of the plywood and facebrick is encouraged so that the applicant can determine the existing conditions before finalizing the proposed facade treatments above and below the storefront windows, noting there might be a potential for a new sign band and intermediate cornice supported by decorative brackets. That's indicated on the drawing as a possibility. She's saying right now that until they further explore, this is a potential, from what I understand. Noting those elements could or should be further explored. A subsequent certificate of appropriateness application should indicate product submittals and details for the storefront assembly, along with any details for the new sign band, the intermediate cornice, the support brackets, as well as any concepts for exterior lighting and building signage, kind of all typical things we would see in a follow-up discussion. The application concludes with a proposal to replace the existing handrail of pressure-treated components at the second floor level of the rear facade with the code-compliant metal handrail assembly. The new handrail would measure 36 inches high by 188 inches wide and would be composed of 1 5/8 inch tube steel that would have 4 posts, as well as an upper and lower horizontal rail with webbing between composed of smaller vertical pickets. The proposed handrail assembly is appropriate considering it represents a significant improvement over the existing handrail and is to be installed at the less visible rear facade. I do note HCC is not tasked with determining paint color schemes within the district. However, in the past, HCC has requested similar handrails be painted what was called light gray so that it could blend in with the sky above. Applicants tend to want to paint all handrails black, but in the past, we've tended to do handrails that are up high, a lighter color so that it doesn't stand out so much. But again, solely as a recommendation.
Okay. Are you done, Jeff? Yeah. If you know the building, there's the T111 is kind of boxed out, and there's a certain amount you can see from the inside, but there's a section that we can't really see what's up there. So it is possible. Jeffrey had found this sketch, which should be in your packet, although there's no evidence that the way the doors are situated in the sketch is correct. It just doesn't make sense with what's there behind because we have a staircase over here. So this door doesn't make sense. But it's very possible we might still have these in brackets and maybe some cornice here because of the way they've boxed out the siding. So rather than detail this to death. We'd like to have permission to remove all that material and sort of head in this direction based on what we find, and then come back with actual detailed drawings. In terms of angling the return, I would like to do that, but we've got some sloped surfaces in there, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out yet. So the preference here is, due to the scale of the storefront, is to reduce it to the one door plus the necessary latch height clearance at 18 inches and angle out. So that's the preferred direction for that. So it's a little inconclusive at this point, but the owner is very excited about doing something that's in this character. And we just are hopeful of finding some of what was originally there still underneath. The rear, I think, is fairly straightforward. The owner had worked with someone to get a code compliant, better railing at the back guard.
Is the 36 inch high enough?
I questioned that myself.
I thought it was 42.
Yeah, I think it has to do, and I'm kind of looking at Mike, it's
Yeah.
the number of units, I think.
Well, it's the height off the ground too, as well. So
Okay, so it's just 2 apartments, or is it 3?
I think
recall.
he might be almost 20 feet off the ground.
So we need to go to 42 then.
Need to go to 42.
That's right.
How are they going to fasten? Do you know how they're going to fasten the railing? Is it a flat roof?
It is a flat roof, and it looks like he's got flanges. If you look there, flanges, and then it's a mounting plate, 1/2 inch steel, and then looks like it's bolted down. Do you have this? It's in the small drawing, Mike.
Here you go, Mike.
Oh, okay. Oh, I got it. Here we go. Okay. And that's not going to have any gates or anything on it, right?
No, so it comes along and then it returns, and there's a staircase coming down. So I think it's all contained.
Okay.
And if you look at one of the photos, you'll see there is a, it looks like a historic metal fencing that's on top of the parapet and a curved sort of extension. So that protects that side of the,
Yeah, I saw that.
that's kind of neat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's just going to replace that with that fence?
So that I think stays, and then the guard replaces the pressure treated 2x material, which is terrible.
Is that a concrete roof that it's going into?
I think it's a frame roof, and it's going to set back some. It's quite a contraption that's there now.
Is there any provision for some other management of refuse and trash along that?
You know, Craig, I'm not that involved with the project in terms of the apartments. So we did not do the drawings for the apartments. We're just doing facade.
Okay.
I mean, the owner is pretty responsible. I would hope.
That's just an ugly stretch of street.
Oh, I know. There's like no sidewalk too.
Truly unfortunate. I mean, I know that there's not a whole lot of other place to go with it,
Yeah.
but I just wondered if there were any discussions regarding it.
Not that I was aware
Okay.
of or part of.
I move that we recommend a certificate of appropriateness for the facade work at the lower level to complement the existing COA for the second and third floor sections with field exploration to be done and details to be presented to us if there's some change required based on what you find.
I'll second.
Just one to
Oh,
add,
okay.
and changing the rail from 36 to 42 inches.
Good call.
Right.
Yep.
And I'll still second that. Put to vote, Craig Evans.
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I vote aye. Mike
Aye.
Simonson and Ken Lausch.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, and we will go on to our final project 210, 212 East 3rd Street.
This structure is a 2-story, 3-bay, detached brick masonry building with a flat roof. Building portion facing East 3rd Street was originally constructed in circa 1900 as an appliance and hardware store, but later served as a tavern under various ownership. The upper floor level has 1/1 double hung windows. The applicant, no, it's 2/2, but I couldn't find the 2/2 either when I went or from historic photographs. So,
That's
anyway, while the original entry-level storefront has been altered to include a central recess entrance that is flanked on either side by modified window openings, each with side-by-side sliding windows. During the mid-20th century, the storefront received a cladding of form stone, regionally referred to by the brand name Permastone, a type of pigmented stucco shape to imitate the appearance of stone masonry. The east facade was clad in vinyl siding sometime during the late 20th century. Masonry and wood frame rear additions connect the structure to the 2-story brick masonry residential building that faces Mechanic Street. Many architectural features have been lost over time, so it can no longer be identified by a defining style. Applicant proposes to renovate the existing front facade and a portion of the side facade. The citations I use for my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9 that we referenced in the previous 2 agenda items, the ordinance also referenced in the 2 previous agenda items, as well as the Historic Conservation Commission guidelines for storefronts. My evaluation and recommendations. The applicant initially appeared before HCC on October the 18th, 2021, with a request to paint the existing formstone cladding at the front or north facade, as well as the vinyl siding at the east side facade in a dark red color. To modify the existing windows at the entry-level front facade, and to increase the recessed entry flush with the front facade before installing a new storefront entrance door. At that time, HCC noted various concerns about the applicant's proposal and unanimously tabled any decision to determine the appropriateness of the proposed work. Applicant subsequently appeared before HCC on January the 5th of 2022 with proposals to replace the vinyl siding rather than paint with a brick veneer, to replace the recessed entrance with a storefront entrance door and transom, to restore the glass storefront, and to replace 3 double-hung windows and add faux shutters at the upper floor level. HCC noted the lack of the required scale drawings and specifications of the proposed products before unanimously agreeing to table any decision for determining the appropriateness of the proposed work. The applicant was encouraged to cooperate with a licensed design professional, could be an architect, engineer, etc., experienced with historic structures before returning for subsequent review of proposals that respond to expressed concerns. The current application reflects involvement of a qualified design professional by including the required scale drawings while also addressing the need for an accessible front entrance. The proposal to remove the existing formstone at the front facade before repairing and repointing historic brick beneath is appropriate. The applicant agrees to return to HCC if the condition of the original brick is very poor or seriously damaged during the removal process with a proposed alternative. The applicant also proposes additional appropriate improvements to the front facade, including, again, everything I'm listing now I consider appropriate, removing the infill between the entry-level windows to reveal the original frames and sills. If the frames and sills no longer exist, the applicant agrees to install new ones to match the original. They also suggest installing new insulated glass within the original entry-level window openings and apply an etched film over the interior glass surfaces to address privacy concerns due to restrooms behind each window. I note HCC previously accepted spandrel glass in limited applications as appropriate within the district, so discussion is warranted. Now, I admit restrooms are behind those windows. I'm not discounting that. Just looking at your statements from previous examples, you allowed limited spandrel glass, meaning the proportion of overall glass to use of spandrel glass was rarely minor. And in this case, the suggestion is the entire, both storefronts would be, in this case, not spandrel, but it seems
No,
to be an
it's,
implied
it's
film.
yeah,
so-
it's actually, I'm suggesting they use a film only because at some point he'd like to move the bathrooms away. So
That was
then we
my-
could take the film off.
Yeah, that was my
Mm.
kind of assumption. The next point will be to install a new full light entrance door with etched film at the existing recessed entrance. So originally they wanted to make the entrance flush. Now this keeps the existing recess. I didn't see any mention of the material of proposed door. Usually we would then see some kind of specification, etc. And also, I'm not quite sure about the reason for etched film on the glass door. So perhaps the applicant during the discussion could justify not only for the restroom windows, but also the door. Also, suggestion to repair the existing transom above the door or create new if it no longer exists and install etched glass. Again, for a transom, etched glass is fairly common, so there's no concern about that. To repair and paint the 3 existing double-hung windows at the upper floor level, including the frame sills, and install energy-efficient exterior storms. That's all appropriate. We always put in the statement in the motion that the storm window divides should match the divides of the existing windows. Sometimes those divides are not exactly 50-50, so we want to make sure that the storms mimic the horizontal divides of the windows. To repair and paint all existing window and door heads, as well as the upper cornice. Again, that's appropriate. To install a new concrete ramp and landing to create an ADA compliant entry access, along with steel posts, bottom rail, and a traditional profiled handrail painted in black color. Traditionally, we would request some kind of a detail, and perhaps that could be forthcoming. It's implied in a drawing, but no sizes or anything are indicated on the drawing. Similar to the previous application, the applicant proposes to remove the inappropriate vinyl siding at the east or side facade, as well as a segment on the north facade, the middle portion, and install thin brick over the appropriate substrate. The thin brick is to match or blend with the existing historic brick. That proposal is appropriate, and we've talked about that in the past. But we would want to see samples of those ultimately. I also encourage, I don't know if the applicant has considered, but there are so many different brick types because this is an addition to an addition to an addition to an addition. They might want to consider a different product. Oftentimes on similar buildings, we've suggested a stucco instead of a thin brick as still a product that's appropriate for the district, but doesn't introduce yet another material to the project. But thin brick would be appropriate pending approval of any kind of samples. The application concludes with a proposal to install a 60-inch high brick wall at the northwest corner of the existing structure that terminates into the adjacent building as a screen to shield public view of the dumpster behind and to enclose the side yard. The overall width of the wall is not indicated, but when I measured it proportionally, it seems to be about 20 feet wide. The proposed brick wall and mortar joints are to be determined after the front facade work is completed according to the application, but would, quote, match or blend with the historic brick as closely as possible. Relevant design guidelines, quote, encourage the use of new materials sympathetic to the historic properties in the streetscape, of similar or complementary color, size, texture, scale, craftsmanship, and applicability to the function performed. Traditional building materials such as brick, wood, stone, terracotta, and wrought iron are recommended for appropriate fencing. They're proposing a brick fence, so that falls in the category that's recommended as appropriate for the district. Thus, the concept of the brick proposed wall is appropriate. There's an entrance gate that is depicted. However, the application notes that specifications are to be submitted to HCC for future consideration. The proposed 60-inch height of the brick wall should be clarified with the zoning officer or the code official. We have Mr. Simonson here. I was thinking that fencing,
Front yard can only be, front facing can only be
front
48
facing,
inches.
correct. Yes, what? I'm sorry.
48 inches.
48. I wasn't sure. So yeah. So again, I can't determine that, but I had the impression this was too tall for that rule. And the design of the wall should be, in my opinion, further developed. Right now, it's just a blank brick wall. 20 feet is pretty wide without any kind of delineation, especially where it meets both buildings. You would expect kind of a support column, something beefier, maybe even something in the middle to give it some structural support. Definitely where you've got the gate, it's going to need some kind of a delineation. Oftentimes the foundation will be heavier, will come forth, to give it some kind of a definition, and then there's no indication of a cap. So typically we would see some kind of either a cast stone cap or a metal flashing something that I just couldn't see here in the drawing. So in my opinion, the concept of a brick wall is appropriate, but I think in order to really approve it, we would need more details. As in the past, applicants should be aware that appropriate glazing is not tinted, colored, or reflective. Again, here we're looking at applied film. Subsequent certificate of appropriateness applications should include product samples and details for the thin brick veneers and the mortars, various components of the screen wall, the gate, as well as concepts for any kind of new exterior lighting and building signage. The last application, the applicant talked quite at length about signage. I don't see anything here. So we know something is coming. Just as a reminder that there was no resolution passed previously about signage, so we're assuming we should see something in the future.
That might be in the far future because he hasn't spoken to me about that. In that there's a church currently in there and it's going to stay in there, and that's part of the film on the door because I really wanted to see it go to a glass door, and I think they wanted to have some because you would look right in. There's kind of restrooms on either side. It goes right in, and then there's the church kind of there. So I think they wanted some privacy. Again, it sounds like that tenant might not be there for a very long time. So if that were the case, then he could remove the film and have more of a storefront. The entrance is extremely dangerous. That's why I suggested to him the landing, the ramp. It's basically ramped up that, 6 inches or so within 3 feet right at the door. And it's not safe. And so I said, you really need to think about this. So he did accept that that's something he really should do. Especially if we have a change of use coming down the road.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how far that comes out into the right of way.
Yeah, it looks like we might be okay in terms of leaving. I think we have at least 5 feet left before we get to the tree wells. It was actually surprisingly wide, I think, but need to double check it. The reason I say it needs to be double checked is also that the draftsman did not draw the wall correctly. It does not attach to the next building. There is a 3 foot.
Okay.
The plan is more accurate from what I recall. And again, you're right, Jeffrey, we would be developing that with some sort of piers to give it support and some articulation and a cap.
Mike, you said that the height was 48 inches.
For a front fence. Now, this could be considered, it would depend on whether the zoning officer considered this a side yard or a front yard.
Well, what I'm thinking of specifically is that the old firehouse on Broadway.
Oh yeah.
There's a front-facing fence on there that's 6 feet tall with a gate in it, and it has, it goes along the side for their outdoor seating area. And I just,
the reason for
You might have got a
this,
variance for that.
it's possible. I mean, concern here is just to have dumpsters out of sight.
And this is mid-block, if I remember correctly, so there's no line of sight issues with
No,
parking or
you're
anything like
between
that.
2 buildings and
Yeah. So I think that they would probably look at it as a side yard, and it would probably be the 6 feet.
and he's saying 5,
And he's
which
saying 5.
is more human.
Yeah, we just
Right.
have to, it would be part of the permit package.
That's a good question. Chris, I noticed the building next door. I'm wondering if this building would benefit from some kind of cornice line or signage ban as well.
You know, I maybe I just want to see what's under there, under that formstone, and see if a lot of this was all a change. Just don't know much about it. And Jeffrey, you weren't able to find historic photos either, right? So we don't really know. I believe it was originally just a house. There were many residences along 3rd Street at the early part of the 20th century. By the time you get to the 20s, everything starts to get commercial. The building I'm in had a whole face on it, and they raised it a whole level. They pushed back 100 feet. So this could have been altered in the 20s into a commercial use, and then this formstone comes along more in the 60s, and they cover it all with that. I just don't know. Was it? Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Much better use.
Church and then a tavern. Or a tavern and then a church, making up for.
So in the proposal, Chris, all of this vinyl siding will be thin brick? Is that?
That's what the owner would like to do. I remember when that came for the siding, it was originally that asphalt brick look stuff that was deteriorated. And then, I think we struggled over the vinyl, but ultimately.
But it was better than what was there.
Correct.
Because we had an on-site visit for that thing.
I think you're right, Craig. Yeah.
That might have
So
been before me.
I think it might have been. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
It was a while ago. So he would like to improve its appearance. So it would be the whole side, whether we go to stucco or we go with the thin brick. And I do think we've got a lot of bricks going on, and that stucco might be a better choice, and it might be budget-wise a better choice as well once he starts to get into all of this.
Sure. Yeah.
Would there be any likelihood that large blank wall would have some penetrations in it, some window eventually, or?
I think you're right on the property line, so putting windows in will be a problem.
Okay.
I think there are some as you move back, but they're there. And the sort of one-story piece that connects has an apartment in it, entered from the other side. But I believe we're right on the property line.
Okay.
That'd be nice.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the project at 210 through 212 East 3rd Street with per the following improvements to the facade, which include repair and paint of existing wood windows above the 2nd floor, and then it includes new casing and trim around the existing windows on the 1st floor, adding a film, which is meant to be a temporary measure for privacy. That the privacy wall being installed is built to a height per zoning, detailed appropriately with a cap and supporting piers. That the side where there's existing vinyl siding, we would approve either thin brick or stucco. Although it's a long expanse, maybe it needs to be broken up with something. That per investigation on the front facade, we'd like to see a signage ban or a cornice, and I think we understand that at a certain point the owner will come back to us with a proposal for that. Oh, and, I guess the most basic thing, of course, is the removal of the existing stone coat on the front. I guess the only other thing I'm not entirely clear, it looks like the design for the railing for the handicap ramp isn't entirely worked out, but
No, it's not.
I trust it's going to be done appropriately.
Actually, since then, I've thought a little bit about the design. We'll bring that back for final on it, but that was just a symbol for it.
Okay. But it looks like the main thing is you're taking an unsafe situation and rectifying it.
It's bad.
Okay. And overall, it's nice to see this project in much more presentable than the last time we saw it.
I'll second.
Okay, then any other discussion? We shall put it to vote. Craig Evans.
Aye.
Roger Hudak.
Aye.
I, of course, vote aye. Mike Simonson.
Aye.
Ken Lausch.
Aye.
And I apologize. The motion carries. It's unanimous. I realize we're still supposed to be taking public comment, and sir, if you wish to say anything, you're welcome.
Well, I'm waiting for the invitation. I'm just hanging around to make a general proposition that anything Chris Usler is associated with, I generally support, although as Bill Bryson once wrote, generally speaking is a dangerous thing to do, generally speaking.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Chris, for being a trooper tonight.
Well, to you as well. That's a difficult one.
Yeah, but it was worth it just to have you give us a helpful comment.
It's very tough. I mean, there's so many aspects to our sort of built environment and history. And, how do you weigh the importance, as Bill says, I mean, it's all these, and as you said, all the smaller, maybe not beautiful buildings that make up a district. And, it's tough.
Yeah, this was a tough one.
Have
Yeah.
we approved the minutes?
Motion, would you like to make a
I would
motion?
move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Any seconds on that?
I'll second.
Very good. Thank you. Any new business? Okay, if there's no new business, I guess it's been a long night.
I'll
and
make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Yes.
So moved.